right, what is going on? Welcome back to the DadWise podcast. Thank you for joining me on the second episode of the podcast. I'm Isaac, the host. Last week we talked about some books you should be reading as a dad. And today we're going to be talking about the most important relationship in your fathering journey, and that's the relationship with your wife, how to maintain a good relationship with her and what you can do to keep things fresh, keep things alive, keep things healthy. So just want to let you know that you can find all the DadWise content on Instagram and YouTube and not really TikTok, but I have a blog called dadwise.co. You can find articles and stuff. And I think that is it. So we'll just jump into it. Today, the relationship with your wife is the most important relationship that you're going to have as a father. If you spend all the time in the world focusing on your children and you pour everything you can into them, but you don't treat your wife well and you don't get along well with your wife, you're going to have failed as a father, because the way you treat your wife is really modeling for how your daughters are going to be expecting to be treated by their husbands and how your sons are going to treat women in their life. And so we need to be putting our best foot forward when it comes to our relationship with our wife. And so if that relationship is strong, everything else will flow from that strength. And we all know that when our wives are not doing well, the whole household feels off. And so as husbands, it's our job to cultivate our wives and to make sure they're doing well and to care for them. The Bible says that our wives should look like well-watered vines. And so the question to ask yourself is my wife thriving? Is she living her best life? Is she feel connected to me? Is she filled up? Are her love tanks filled up? And how can we do that? And as husbands, I think one of the first major things is just a mentality, is to be thinking about your wife and to be engaging in that way actively and pursuing her heart and pursuing time with her and getting to know her, continuing to get to know her. And I call this dating your wife. So that's kind of the concept for the day, is to date your wife. And so to be thinking about your wife like how you thought about her when you were dating. So when you're dating your girlfriend at the time, your now wife, you're thinking about her all the time. You're making plans to hang out with her. You're making plans for what to talk about when you see her. You're thinking about things she likes. And if you see something she likes, you grab it for her and buy it for her, flowers and gifts and whatever else. And then eventually when you get married, you kind of let off the gas, or at least a lot of people do. A lot of men start to kind of just put that on cruise control and then start to focus on other things in their life, which is fine, as men we're builders and creators and conquerors. And so once we've conquered something, we move on to the next thing. But we don't want to be thinking about our wives as something to be conquered, but as a woman to be cherished and loved and cultivated. So we have to fight for balance in our lives and fight to maintain this most important relationship that we have. So one of the things we do when we're dating our wives is that we put our best foot forward. So that means to have manners, to have respect, to look our best. I know when we're dating, you spend a lot of time in front of the mirror, checking things out, making sure you look good. And so if you haven't done a little inventory on your appearance lately, maybe it's time to get a haircut and maybe update the wardrobe, maybe start working out a little bit and start putting your best foot forward on the outside, and then on the inside, start putting your best foot forward. Start learning and growing and being the best man that you can be. Make yourself attractive to your wife and continue to develop yourself. That's what we do when we're in a dating mentality, is we're trying to grow, we're trying to be the best we can be. And not just to impress them, but because we love them and because we want to give them a good return on their investment. Your wife has invested her life into you, and so the best we can do, the most we can do, the least we can do is to give her the best that we can be. So dating mentality means putting your best foot forward, looking good, showing up, thinking about her, and just being present in that relationship. And we all know the benefits of having a good connection with your wife. everything flows out of that. I already talked about that. And so one of the big things for maintaining a relationship, maintaining a connection with your wife, is a weekly date night. This is a practice that I have done pretty consistently. My wife and I have made it a priority in our lives, and we live close to my parents, and so we've been able to get out almost every week since we've been married, except for, when we have a newborn baby or other things get in the way. But the habit, the rhythm always comes back into our life. And so we can stay connected that way, check in on each other. We can air grievances. I've heard of a lot of couples who save their best fights when they're on dates because that's the time they have to really talk without children interrupting them. And so date nights can be a great time to connect, air things out, because if you don't air things out, then bitterness grows. And so we don't want that to happen. It's also a good time to share vision for where you see the future of your family going. As the husband, you're kind of like the coach. I'm going to talk more about this next week, about the role of a father in the house. But date nights are a great time to cast vision and to get your wife on board for what you're learning about and what you're aiming towards and what your vision is. And also, date nights are just fun. We should all still be having fun with our spouses after we get married. It can be a grind just running daily life and keeping kids alive and keeping your job and running the household can be tough. And so to go out and have fun once a week gives you something to look forward to and is a staple for creating memories with your wife. So that's some of the benefits. That's the mentality you can have when dating your wife. And then the last part we're going to talk about are just some tips for how to keep this rhythm, make this rhythm happen. If you don't have in-laws in town, you can trade a date night with a friend. So you watch their kids, they watch your kids, alternating weeks maybe, or Tuesday, Thursday, whatever it may be. Have their kids to your house while they go out. Whatever you need to do to make it happen. You can also hire a babysitter, but that can be expensive. Babysitters, they know their value, and so they price themselves accordingly. But if you trade dates with a friend, that's a great way to do it. You can also consider just moving closer to your parents or her parents. There's something to be said about living close to in-laws. Having free babysitting is not something to be taken for granted. It should be budgeted in when you're planning your life. Some things to do on date nights. There's all sorts of things. You should really do something that helps you connect and talk. Going to movies isn't my favorite thing because at the end of the date, you haven't really discussed anything. So I like to just go to a simple dinner and go on a walk. I mean, it's a pretty easy deal. But coming with questions is something that I don't know I've ever been coached in, but you should come with some, you don't have to write them down and be weird about it, but come with some topics that you want to talk about, some ideas that you have. Reading books is a really great way to start these kinds of conversations. Like, hey, I was reading this about disciplining our kids, or I heard this podcast today about disciplining kids, or about roles in the family. What do you think about how our roles are working out? And are there any things in our kids that you think we should be working to correct or hone or guide them into? And then always ask her about her interests, right? You don't want to just be talking about yourself the whole time. Ask her how she's doing, if she works, how work is going. If she's with the kids all day, ask her what she's thinking and feeling about the kids. If she's happy with how homeschooling is going, or whatever else she likes. If she's a gardener or taking care of animals or whatever she does, make sure you come interested in her. Curiosity goes a long way in a relationship. If you can stay curious about your wife, stay interested in her heart and pursuing her heart, that will go a long way in maintaining your relationship. We've had some friends who do date nights and they're like, man, it's awkward. We haven't been together alone without our kids in years. And so it might be awkward. If you jump into this and you haven't been doing it for a while, it might be a little strange, but that's totally fine. That's where your list of questions can come into play and help you out. But push through that awkwardness. After the first month or couple times of getting together, you'll remember how it was when you were dating, and you can hit your flow again. Besides weekly date nights, a nightly check-in is also a great way to maintain a relationship with your wife. So you're not just business partners or whatever else you end up being when you don't check in every night. Roommates that pass as ships in the night. That's something people say. A nightly check-in is a great practice to have if you're a married couple. It'll give you a chance to coordinate schedules, check in on the day, and just make sure you're staying close. So when you get your weekly date night, you're not just catching up the whole time during that. So a nightly check-in is great. That's one of the reasons why we put our kids to bed at like 7 o'clock. 8 o'clock now in the summertime because it's so bright out. But we try to get them down early so that we have our time to ourselves in the evening, because that's important for us. And our kids need us to be filled up. They need us to be present. They need us to be connected to each other so we are on the same page, presenting a united front in their training and parenting. So another thing I've seen and heard people talk about is a yearly getaway where you get a couple nights in a row alone away from your kids. This may seem like a stretch for some people, but it'd be something to be saving towards and investing towards, and bribing grandparents with chocolate and whatever else you can bribe grandparents with. But it's been an important thing that my wife and I have done pretty much every year. We get away for a couple nights, not far away, just a couple hours in either direction, stay at a hotel, go on some hikes, hang out and check in. Some of those times I've been more intentional and we get like a book and we try to read through it and journal our thoughts and stuff. But usually just organic connections and conversations work better for us. I've got a little vision thing written out for our family now that I'm sure we'll take on our next one and talk about. But over the last few years, it's just been hanging out and connecting. So those are a few little tips for connecting with your wife and keeping that relationship strong. If you all have any other comments or ideas, you can always leave them in comments or shoot me an email or a DM on Instagram. But other than that, I just want to encourage you guys to pursue your wives, get after their hearts and go for it. So yeah, and if you want to help me out with this, you can leave a like or a rating or a comment or whatever you do on the platform you're watching on. If it's YouTube, a like and a subscribe. If it's Spotify, leave a rating. Podcast, you can leave a review for me. That would help out a lot as we build this channel and platform out. I would really appreciate that. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week with some talking about, what is it? It's about the role of a father in the house. So make sure you subscribe so you can hear that one, and we'll see you out there. Peace.